The Elder Scrolls is a series near and dear to many of us. We are drawn in by the stories, the world, and the characters that we meet, into a world much more fantastical and awesome than our own. Of these stories, few are as multifaceted like the story of its creation. And of the still living races of Tamriel, none are as secretive and little known as the Saxhleel, or as you more likely know them as, the Argonians, the humanoid reptiles of the Black Marsh. As with all these stories, I want to quickly preface and provide a bit of context about the Argonians, but I'll keep that one short because there's a lot to go over today. The origins of the Argonians are intrinsically tied to those of the Hist, a sort of sentient mushroom tree that are found almost entirely in Black Marsh, although there are a few exceptions, and there might be a floating city of them. The books are weird, okay? And I need to briefly mention that we also know very little about them, but just know that they are probably as old as the Elnafae, and according to the annotated Inuit, they most likely had a whole civilization, which got destroyed during the War of Manifest Metaphors. The Argonians were, to quote, made by the Hist to see for them the world where they cannot walk. And as far as the Imperial or Aldmeri scholars know, this is the truth of it. Due to the extremely hostile nature of the Argonian homeland, few can penetrate deep into Black Marsh, often being killed, eaten, or worse, by the toxic flora and fauna. Because of this, the Argonians have never really had a chance to engage in any form of intercultural dialogue. So, we must make do with what few sources we have. Right, we should crack on. We've got another mad story to discuss, and then I want to mention a story that discusses what early Argonians appear to have looked like. So sit back, ignore the chirruping of the swamp flies, and grab yourself some blood wine, and let's tell the Saxhelian story of creation. There was first only Atak, the great root. It knew of nothing but itself, so it decided to be everything. It grew and it grew, trying to fill the nothing with itself. As it grew, it formed new roots, and those roots took names, and they wanted space of their own to grow. Then Atak learned that there were things other than itself. They were just like Atak, but went a different way from it. They saw and made strange new things that did not last except in how it changed them. Atak continued to grow until something came back from the nothing. It was like a root, but had scales and eyes and a mouth. It told Atak that it was called Kota, and it had been growing too. Now that it had a mouth, it was hungry. Atak named Kota for what it was: serpent. It put roots through the serpent's eyes, but Kota was old and strong like the root, and had grown fangs whilst it was away. It bit Atak, and they coiled around one another. From their struggle, new things came to be. Atak learned things Kota had learned, including hunger, and so it bit Kota back. They ate and roiled for so long, they became one and forgot their conflict. They shed their skin and severed their roots and called themselves Atakota, and said, maybe. When Atakota said this, the skin it had shed knew itself. It ate the severed roots, and even though it was dead, it followed Atakota like a shadow. Atakota continued to roil, and each of its scales was a world that it devoured. But now Atakota was not in conflict, and things had time to begin and end. The shadow wished it could eat these things, but its belly was full of roots that were growing. When the shadow could bear it no longer, it swam closer to Atakota and spat out the roots. And now that its belly was empty, the shadow almost ate them again, and everything else it saw. But it had come to see the roots as its own after carrying them, so instead it told them secrets and went to sleep. The roots found others and told them how they had survived in the belly of the shadow, and how they were still able to grow there. When they shared this knowledge with the others, it changed them, and they took on new forms with new names. Some of these spirits wanted to keep the names and forms they had chosen, but they had learned them through the shadow, and it was now in all of them, making them temporary. They learned of hunger and conflict, and they learned to fear change and called it death. These spirits were angry and afraid. but the roots showed the spirits ways between places from when Attack had made paths out of nothing. They could use these riverways to hide from death. The spirits were content and set about to make things that looked like them and shared in their aspects and loved them. They kept growing until they were as big as Atakota, and they forgot it came before them, and that it had a shadow that was sleeping. In time, the worlds were too big, and there was no more room. Again, the spirits went to the roots to ask for more, but the roots had gone to sleep, content with what they had made, because it changed so often that it did not need to grow. The spirits grew so desperate and hungry that they tore at Atakota's skin and drank of its blood. They ate until they broke Atakota, so that Atak remembered growing and Kota remembered being nothing. There was conflict again, and from the spirits Atak and Kota learned about death, and so there was violence, blood, and sap. In the chaos, the spirits were lost and afeared, so they ate one another and themselves. They drank of blood and sap, and they grew scales and fangs and wings. And these spirits forgot why they had made anything other than to eat it. There were other spirits that still clung to what they were and what they had made. A forest spirit came and saw that the roots loved their children like she loved hers. So she taught them how to walk, how to talk. They told her secrets with new words, and she sang the song back to them. The roots woke up when they heard this and joined with the forest. The roots saw that Kota's blood had made oceans, and Atak's sap had made the stones, and each of these spirits had never known the shadow. The roots knew what this would mean, and asked the shadow to protect its children. The shadow woke. It looked upon Kota and Atak and saw how different the nothing had become, and how it was becoming the same as before. It remembered that it was the skin of Atakota, and it was bigger than Kota or Atak alone, so it decided that it would eat them both. And it did. The shadow ate the snake and the root and the sap and the stone and the oceans of blood and all of the spirits. It had eaten everything before it remembered the roots that were its children, so it looked unto itself to find them. When the shadow saw this, it remembered that it was a skin of something that came before, and it had eaten what came after, and this would be an end that always was. And so the shadow shed its skin, even though that was all it was, and it fell like a shroud over the roots, promising to keep them safe within its secrets. I really like that story. It's very different to a lot of the other stories that exist. Its closest parallel, I think, is the Yakuden Satak story. Similar names aside, it's got those themes of cycles and a lot of similarities for two cultures that more or less live on opposite ends of Tamriel. This story pretty much appears only in the Elder Scrolls Online, so does our next one. Being one of the first games to allow you to enter Blackmarsh, aside from Arena, but Arena looked like this, and you have to play it on DOSBox nowadays, and also one of the Elder Scrolls Legends games, but once again, they look like this. We got a lot of our stories from the Elder Scrolls Online because we got to know a lot more about Argonia rather than offhand dialogue from NPCs or misremembered stories. But we'll leave the in-depth discussion for another video, and like I said, I wanted to quickly discuss the story that gets told through a series of books in the Elder Scrolls Online known as The Tales of the Famed Explorer. Before this video ends up being an hour long, I won't read out the whole series, but instead I'll mention the important lines from the series that drew my interest. They say the ancient Argonians had golden scales that could blind lowly men and mer. They built their greatest city higher and higher until they reached the sun. Some say that it destroyed them. Others say they cracked it open like an egg and became gods. This appears to be a reference to the Dawn-era empire of the Argonians that mysteriously disappeared before the arrival of the Aldmer. But wait, there's more. The ancient Argonian strode towards Matthias then, screeching in some guttural tongue. It was 2 heads taller than an average Saxhleel. with golden scales, bright feathers of red and purple and green, and with great curving horns. Over its head was a mask of gold, carved in the visage of a bird. It wore feathered robes and golden bangles, and when it spread its arms it appeared to have wings. Matthias could hardly tell where the creature ended and its ornamentation began. This gives us a really cool image of what the original Argonians look like. Some kind of like dragon humanoids, but that's purely my speculation on the matter, and I'll talk more about it in another video. There's one final bit I want to go over, and then we'll start wrapping up, I promise. I'm sorry I've kept you so long. The golden mask slipped off and clanged to the floor. There was blood on the inside. Matthias saw the snake's face was changing over and over again. 12 times it changed before it was a snake once again. He was falling and then flying. The worlds rushed up to meet him, all fire and glory and madness. He felt a current on wings he did not remember having, and he soared. He flew over cities of gold and cities of black stone. They were endless, like the hist that cradled them. The sky was aflame, and the sun was a pit. Still he flew, for he had not the strength to do more than let the current carry him. He came upon a tower. It was tall and vast, and many trees grew from its many layers of marsh. Creatures lived and died without ever knowing of a world outside the tower, and at its top was a tree that bled fire. Other winged things that looked like him circled it. They cried out in words he understood but did not know. He felt a deep sadness as the tower fell away. He looked upon and saw other worlds and other towers. They were spinning wheels, and they crashed into one another, and their spokes got tangled up, and they broke one another. And he saw that his world was breaking too, but quick as a snake, a shadow came and swallowed up the roots of the tower so that they would not break. And still he flew. There was only fire and darkness then, and so much noise. But he was too tired to be afraid, and so Matthias slept and drifted away into a black sun. I really recommend going and reading the Tales of the Famed Explorer. It's a really cool story that shows a lot of Black Marsh, and I think you'll see why. I have a faint speculation that this could just be basically a drug-induced hallucination, but there's some really important things that come out of here and the first story that provokes further looking at, in my opinion. I mean, the big thing that I want to talk about out the back of this is the thing of the towers, but that is definitely a video of its own, because that's some trippy shit, my guy. But this video is getting really long, and I've got to go edit it, and you'll hear from Editing Poro at the end of this video. So thank you all, and I will catch you in just a few moments. Play the intermission music. Alright, that's enough of that, I think. So thank you all very much for watching. I know this was a bit longer than the other videos, and I don't know what was going on with the microphone. I think I fixed it, but we'll see. So I apologise for that. I also apologise that this is a little bit behind schedule. I made the terrible decision to relapse into my World of Warcraft addiction, send help, and also game time. And I will hopefully see you in the next video, which should be about the Khajiit story of creation, which is excellent because it means I get to go find lots of pictures of kittens. See you all in the next video, everyone. Stay safe in these times, and goodbye.